Why do people stay in a toxic relationship? Now, this question, I know a lot of you want to know, but before I address that, by no means necessary is this video focused on people who are in domestic abusive relationships, because I feel like this question puts a lot of responsibility on the victim in this case, who is facing the abuse. And quite frankly, there is this lack of empathy when it comes to this question when you're considering someone who is experiencing domestic violence, because I feel like most of the time it's not as easy as just leaving. It's more like your survival. You can die in the relationship and you can die leaving the relationship. So I feel like escaping that relationship is much different than what we're going to be talking about in this video. This video is mainly people who are in toxic relationships, don't know how they got in there, but they cannot leave. Now, I was in a toxic relationship, or I've been in toxic relationships before, and some of these points definitely resonate with me. So the first one I would say is ignorance, because that was one of my number one things. I was ignorant to the fact that I was in a toxic relationship. Most abusive relationship or toxic relationship didn't start off as toxic. It just slowly became very, very toxic. And then you don't know how you got there, or you cannot even find yourself within the toxicity. You can be quickly engulfed or overwhelmed by, the love bombing stage. So when it quickly becomes abusive, you miss all the red signs. And now you're left wondering, is this abuse or is this normal? I'm not quite sure. So as a result, you just stay, because the next point, you hope for a better day. You hope that things will go back to how it used to be. So you tend to give chance upon chance upon chance because you want someone to change. And before you know it, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, a decade, and even 20 years, and you're still in this repetitive cycle. What you need to understand is abusers, users, toxic people, they are master manipulators and very, very crafty. So sometimes it's not abuse upon abuse upon abuse. Sometimes you have good days, so there's highs and lows. So when the highs kick in, you kind of forget the lows, and then the lows come, and then you're like, maybe I can get him back or her back into the highs again, and then the cycle keeps going, and then you stay. The other one is also denial. Sometimes there's this stigma associated with abuse. I know I've thought about that before, that just get out. Oh, they couldn't possibly be abused. They're too smart for that. And I used to think that of myself, that I was too smart to be abused. I thought I was quite intelligent. I would see when someone was treating me like a doormat. But unfortunately, even though they told me that I'm sure you wouldn't allow yourself to be treated like a doormat, that was their reverse psychology trying to tell me, just because I'm telling you you won't allow it doesn't mean I'm not going to treat you like a doormat because you don't realize it just yet. That was such a mouthful, but I hope you understood that. So there's this stigma associated with being in a toxic relationship or being abused. So chances are your defenses will rise up when someone is trying to shed a bit of light into the situation, because sometimes when you're in the relationship, you don't really know how it is. It's the onlookers that can see the abuse and how it's changing you. They're the ones that can really speak some life into you. But again, most of the time, these manipulators have isolated you from your loved ones, people who can actually talk some sense into you. They've isolated you, or they've turned you against your friends or your friends against you. So it's just you and the abuser. So if you are an onlooker and you see this, please be very, very gentle and empathetic when you're speaking to your friend who you suspect is in a toxic relationship. If they sense any kind of from you, they will quickly believe the abuser and the narrative they've shared about you to them. Hopefully that's making sense. Also, some people have a really defeated mentality because they've grown so accustomed to the toxicity. They enjoy it, not enjoy in a good way. It's just their body and their mind and their soul is just so used to that. They don't know themselves outside of the abuse or the toxicity. They don't know if they can even find themselves. So, or even if they're worth anything more than that. So they just stay. They just stay because they find themselves within the abuse. Even if the person they see is something worthless, they still feel seen by the abuser, unfortunately. And that can be quite addictive. The other point is being very misguided or just having a misguided idea of love. Most of us have been there where we think we can save the day. If you haven't seen my attachment style video, I don't know if I've posted it or not by the time of this video, but the pleaser type, you have this mentality that you need to save people, so this just becomes a never-ending opportunity to save the other person. But the catch is they don't want to be caught. They don't want to be caught. So you'll be constantly chasing them like this and neglecting your own needs in the process. And the thing is, I'm gonna tell you, you're never going to catch them because they don't want to be caught. It's extremely difficult to wake up a person who was never asleep. Have you ever pretended to be sleeping when your parents came into the room? Well, I have, and they have tried to wake me and wake me and wake me. I did not wake up because I was already awake. So I could pretend as long as possible or until they gave up and believed the lie that I was asleep. That's exactly how this misguided hope is like, because you're constantly trying to catch someone who could never be caught in the first place. Also, some people lack the ability to see the person for who they are, okay? We have these built up fantasies about how they made us feel, especially if the D is good or something like that. You stay for the D. Everything else is secondary to you. And that can be so damaging for you because, oh God, sometimes we have this wishful thinking, again, very, very much in line with the points I've already talked about. We're just so wishful and so hopeful and don't want to give up on this person, or don't even want to be alone and left with our own thoughts, that we'd rather stay and just take it as it is. Some people also have the mentality that anything is better than nothing. Similar to the point I've spoken about, loneliness can make people do certain things. People do not want to be alone with their thoughts and do the work that they need to do with that inner child that's been screaming for so long. They don't want to do the work, so they'd rather stay in a toxic relationship, receive the little crumbs that they get, if that, then sit with their own feelings and thoughts. For some people, they have invested way too much in this person, and I know a lot of you women have done that. Some lady shared with me what she'd done to build this man, and I mean the figures, the amount of money she had spent, her tears physically, emotionally, what she had spent into building this man. Yeah, something like that. Sometimes when you've invested so much in someone, even though they're toxic for you, even though they're tearing you down, even though they're doing so much to hurt you, to belittle you, to kill you, if not, there's just this sense of, but I've invested so much. And I'm not saying anything like, you know, the minute someone shows any sign of the, you know, just run. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just trying to let you understand that sometimes people stay in situations that serve them no longer. So it's my prayer that you will get the discernment, you know, working on yourself, knowing your self-worth will really help you know when it's time to move on. Okay? For me, I know that didn't come naturally to me. I had to be rejected and abandoned in order for me to be left with myself and then do the work that needed to be done in order to leave the toxic relationship. So had I not been abandoned, I don't know where I would have been. Thank God. Abandon me. Some people, you know, commit too easily. It's just they want to be attached to you quite quickly. They gotta grab you whilst they can. And then once things start to get quite toxic, they start to feel like, ooh, okay, I committed too easily. If I leave now, maybe it's too quick to leave. Let me just hold on a little bit longer until, you know, the dust settles. Maybe they will change, but let's give it some time before I leave. And it also ties in with the next point, which is you've told the whole world, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, everyone about this relationship. Meanwhile, you are dying. Meanwhile, you're crying behind closed doors. And now all of a sudden, you're going to tell Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, everyone that you're no longer in a relationship. And in fact, that relationship was toxic. Oh, the thought of even having to explain to people that, by the way, yeah, he was this or she was that, so I had to leave. No, you'd rather stay. So people stay because they don't want to have to explain themselves to other people and have to face, you know, what will people say, all the judgment and all the nosiness and all of that comes with it. They don't want to hear it. And people feel like they are unlovable. So when they start to receive the crumbs, they feel like, oh, this is hope. Okay, this is something unfamiliar to me. This is what I've always wanted as a child. And now someone's giving it to me. So when it's mixed with toxicity, they are unable to separate the two and just interpret all of that as a love package. So they feel like that's all they can get. That's all they deserve because they've never had that feeling before. They've never felt accepted before. And all of a sudden this abuser is doing all these things and whatnot. Because some people, after they've abused you, they give you flowers or they give you presents or whatever it is. So it's all very confusing for some. So they'd rather stay. I might have to do a video to really give you steps on how to talk to someone who is in a toxic relationship. If you want a video like that, please comment down below. But yes, until next time, take care and God bless. Bye-bye.